Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the LPSA Gender Equity and Women's Empowerment Working Group meeting. It is really wonderful to see familiar faces, but also the new faces who are joining us, new members who are joining us for this important discussion. My name is Jacqueline Muthura. I have the privilege of working as one of the co-chairs of this working group, but also as a coordinator for the working group. Before we begin, I would like to inform you that translation services from Spanish to English are available for this session. And at the bottom of your screen, you will see a globe icon with the word interpretation beneath it. Please select the language you would like to listen in. Allow me to recognize Sharwan, who will be assisting us with the interpretation. Thank you, Sharwan, for your support today. And for everybody else, please feel free to utilize the translation service if you need it. As we proceed, please keep the Zoom etiquette, allowing us to have a smooth and productive meeting. Keep your microphone muted when you're not speaking to minimize background noise. Please raise your hand if you would like to speak, and we will ensure that everyone has a chance to contribute. Please keep your questions concise to allow for time for everyone to participate. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box and even ask questions within the chat box and the Q&A section. Today, I am excited to announce our new co-chair, Jacqueline Mustashabel. Jacqueline brings a wealth of experience and passion to our group. She has served in various leadership positions, including being a former mayor of Victoria in the Seychelles, and also a co-president of the United Cities and Local Government World. Currently, she is also the immediate former director of the Gender and Youth Affairs Department at UCLG Africa. We are honored to have her join us and in leading and taking this group forward. Moving on, our topic for today is women's voice and political empowerment at the local level, a critical area that intersects with our broader series on women's empowerment and decentralization. We have been holding a series of webinars beginning end of last year when this working group was launched. And the topics have been on gender responsive subnational services, gender responsive finance, women's participation in local government administration, gender in the context of crisis. The next working group meeting, which shall be in Feb 2025, will actually focus on women's participation in local government administration. One of the other topics that we're also looking at is effective multi-level governance as an opportunity for women's empowerment. But the Local Public Sector Alliance is really dedicated to promoting inclusive and equitable societies by understanding and implementing decentralization and localization reforms. Our Gender Equity and Women's Empowerment Working Group brings together actors who share an interest and expertise at the intersection of decentralization, localization, with gender equity and inclusive governance, including women's empowerment at the local level. I would like to warmly welcome you to register as a member and opt into the Gender Equity and Women's Empowerment Working Group. Registration is absolutely free, and it enables you to stay up to date with activities of the working group and even gives you an opportunity to contribute to the discussions and the topics and the activities that we will be implementing. You can register using the link that is provided for in the chat. I would like to take a moment to recognize Paddy Siyanga Natsan, who will be taking us through the next phase, the discussion and introducing our speakers for today, our panel for today. We have a very distinguished panel, including distinguished speakers from the UN. We have speakers from East Africa County and Local Government Association. We have a speaker from Canadian Federation of Municipalities, representing different regions in the world. So we are looking forward to an interesting and interactive session. Welcome, Paddy.
Thank you, Jacqueline. This is really important in terms of setting the frame for the conversation today, but how we also see the intersectionality between a lot of the different issues, and very much aligned to the themes and the questions that we've raised for today, which you have ably managed to put through. And so the idea is for us to listen to our panel of speakers. I would like to introduce Mr. Artan Binaku and Ms. Monica Kosachi, who are joining us from UN Women in the Balkans, out of Kosovo and Albania. And introducing, I will go with men first because we have a very good selection of women, and so we will give you a bit of space, Artan, in terms of the introduction. And Artan Binaku is he holds over 20 years of experience with gender mainstreaming. He's worked around gender responsive budgeting, and also really looked at what services, gender responsive services, look at the local level in Albania, in Kosovo, as well as in Ukraine. A lot of work also around European standards and what that looks like in relation to the Balkans, but also as a trainer. Not only on sort of gender related issues, but also in the university, at the University of Tirana, among others. And he has also been a co-author of quite a number of publications, but that also speak into providing standard operating procedures, if I could put everything together, in how you operationalize a lot of the work around gender mainstreaming and around gender responsive planning. Artan, really happy to have you here today. And with Artan is Monica. I'm just checking if I can see Monica on my screen, and Monica is here. Monica Kosachi. I hope I've pronounced your name correctly, Monica. And who has also really been instrumental in working around a lot of the different issues on gender and human rights as a specialist, but also a lot also with the work in Kosovo, in Albania, as an advisor, which has really been which will really hear a lot, not just at that national level, but also going down to that local level. Their CVs are really packed, and I think that what the best way to hear that is to hear from the presentation that they have for us, that's talking to us a little bit, touching into the global trends, but really going into how they're navigating challenges and the strategies that are working in the Balkans. Artan, Monica, over to you.
Patty, as probably all of you see, I'm blushing already. Thank you. Such an honor to be part of this conference. Maybe before I start my formal presentation, Monica, do you want just to say hi to the working group?
Thank you, Artan. Thank you to everyone. I'm honored to be part of this webinar, and I'm looking forward for all the discussions that we will have. So this is one of the issues that, it's a priority for UN Women, and UN Women is working really hard on empowerment of women in general, but especially when it comes to the women political representation in the focus. There are a lot of strategies that we will be able to present today, and those strategies has resulted to be very successful. So for this year, that there are around 63 countries that are having national elections, and UN Women is working really hard also in those countries to provide as much support as needed to women as voters, but also to women as candidates, and also to women that are elected. So I will give the floor to Artan first to do the presentation that we have prepared, and later I can share much more on our experiences, especially at the local level. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just can you guys hear me? Just someone nod, please, if you can.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, perfect. Did you guys see the presentation? We're sharing.
So Artan, I think you just need to, if you open it, you're probably sharing the screen with the folder. So it hasn't opened into the PPT.
Let me just redo that as well. Yeah, is it coming now? No?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes, it's
if
okay
you
now.
could just put it in
Yeah.
slideshow mode.
Yeah, thank you, Patty. Hi, everyone. Really an honor to present at today's conference. It's what we do in Europe, and honestly, this is something that has to be replicated because globally we don't get much chance of talking to experts such as the ones that were just presented, and honestly, this is a learning experience for myself as well. We tend to tackle issues regionally, but the nature and the challenges in itself are similar, I must say. And while we were doing this presentation together with Monica, we have seen that through the reports we were researching and reading and analyzing, we saw that the current landscape of experiences from Eastern Europe and Balkans are not so far from other countries as well. And as Patty said, after this presentation, we would want to also listen and hear from, from Africa, from Americas, and other countries facing similar challenges when it comes to voice and political empowerment at the local level. I mean, I've been working with local level since 2005, and there has been some progress in Balkans and in Europe, but unfortunately, working 19 years in these very important issues of empowerment. And honestly, I'm a fan of the democracy, but then when you go to a municipal assembly session, or when you go to the parliament of the country and see discussions and the way that decisions are taken, to be frank, I'm a bit disappointed personally, because the society should have done much more than we do, and I think our voices should go beyond this. So let me just walk you through some statistics and an overview of current landscape in globally, and also specifically. The report has been compiled by myself and Monica mainly, and we will be talking about global perspective on gender equality, political representation, which equates into democracy, and then the way that people vote and the way that people decide. Then we'll be talking a bit on importance of women representation at local level. We have had a pre-meeting with Paddy. There we discussed last week, we also discussed some mechanisms at the local level which can be utilized in order to empower women in the local decision making. And there I would want to hear more also from colleagues from Africa and from other regions of the world, so we could just share thoughts and experiences, which sometimes really prove to be successful at local level in raising issues which not only concern women, but children and vulnerable communities as well. We're going to talk about the impact of women's local representation on community development and gender equality, how that impacts certain countries, and we will speak of experiences from Eastern Europe and Balkans. Usually translators hate me because I speak so fast, especially when I do presentations in my mother tongue. So if the translator is having issues on following me, just please tell me. So global trends in women's representations at central level, meaning at the parliament level, as of 2024, and this is UN Women report that was just published. Women approximately only hold 27% of seats in national parliament. And as you could see, globally, 24 years ago...
Artan, sorry to interrupt, but the screen is not moving. Thank you.
I'm really sorry. For how long did you guys miss me? Like 2 seconds.
No,
Only
we
by
had
a
you,
few.
but we were missing only the chart, so don't worry. It's everything.
I'm really sorry.
Yeah,
I kept
fine,
on.
it's fine.
24 years, we globally managed to only reach 10% increase in the statistics, and it would take us another century to make democracy work and women representations in the seats of the national parliaments. That, as I said, there are differences. For example, what struck me was Oceania, where so far, it's only 7.111%, whereas 20 years ago, it was only 3.6%. Other countries have increased, in let's just say in single numbers. No other country has jumped so. Let me just go to the other slide. So globally, as we said, 27% of seats in national parliaments. Europe and Northern America, 16% in 2004, 32.6%. And this basically also tackles lower and single chambers of the country, which the analysis. Only 6 countries has had first 50% or more women in lower or single chambers. Percentage of women globally, 26%, upper chamber 26, all chambers 26. So globally, you see these are the statistics. Jackie, if you could move on to the other slide. Yes. So these are the national parliaments as of 1st of August. You could see none of the chambers, none of the regions surpassed 33.6%. Some regions do, like Americas, they're doing better. Europe is 31, Sub-Saharan Africa is 27, Asia 21, and Middle East and North Africa are at 16.6%. Women speakers on national parliaments. Let me just tell you that over the period of 23 years of plural democracy in Kosovo, there was only one woman speaker in the Kosovan parliament. Globally, there are only 64 women that preside over the houses of the parliaments. 79 houses of these parliaments are bicameral. Therefore, women only occupy 23%. So as you could see, the difference between the members of the parliament and the women speakers, it's practically the same. The difference is like 3%. Globally, there are more than 90 states. Globally, only 28% serve as head of states or governments. Women represent only 23% of the cabinet members, ministries, leading policy areas, and there are only 15 countries which women hold 50% or more position in the cabinet ministers leading to policy areas. The most common portfolios led by women are women and gender equality, family and children affairs, social inclusion, development, social protection, indigenous and minority affairs. This is what we have also discussed with Monica while we're working on the field, is that not many women are involved, let's just say, in budget, like, heading departments of budget and finance. And this is really something that, globally need to work on, because basically that's where we have seen that our practice and our experience shows that those are the directorates where decisions are made, and not many women unfortunately lead those directorates. So this is something, Paddy, your alliance might look into, because in our experience working at local level and also at the central level working with the parliaments, we see that mostly men lead those important directorates. So as of 2023, women 36% of seats in government. Here at local level, we have a bit of an increase compared to what we just presented at central level. And as I said, these are data we have extracted from UN Women reports globally. And as you could see, the world in 2020, if we could call that an increase at all. And at the level of least developed countries, from 30 to 33%. Regional variations on women representations in local municipal assemblies, let's just say, Central and Southern Asia, 41%, Europe and Northern Africa, 30%, Northern Africa only 20%, Sub-Saharan Africa 25%. So you could see there are a bit of differences between the regions represented. So this is also an infographic on local municipal assembly presentation as a representation as of 1st of January 2000. Globally, 36%. What we just presented. Western Asia and Northern Africa, they only make up to 18%. Jackie? Yeah. Regional overview, Nordic countries, high level of representation due to strong gender equality policies and cultural factors. We're going to touch upon quotas. Personally, I'm not a big fan of quotas if we talk about quotas which are below 50%. Honestly, we have had this talk with Monica and with the people we work in Kosovo and in Albania. And for your information, the current president of Kosovo is a woman. And there has been a big discrepancy between two major laws in Kosovo. Law on gender equality, which stipulates that gender equality means when both genders are equally represented at the stage of 50%, whereas electoral law says that women's positions are guaranteed with 30%. So our president, thank God, she has sent the law on general elections to the Constitutional Court, and soon there will be a deliberation by the Constitutional Court in telling if there is a breach of the basic tenets of the Constitution on equity and equality. And probably the law on gender equality will be used and will be enforced, and then the practice of Albania will also be applied as is in Albania, where by law they are obliged to have representation of 50% of both gender. Albania, yeah, you could see, you read my mind. The representation at local level is 46%, which in Europe I think they're doing far better than even European Union countries. For example, France 42. What really struck me was representation of women in local assemblies is only 10%, and this is 2020. Netherlands, Romania, Slovenia, Sweden, 44. So very Albania with regards to representation, very close to Sweden. So we spoke about gender quotas. 94 countries globally have the gender quotas. Countries with reserved seats, countries with candidate quotas, reserved seats and mandatory quotas. Yes, they do make sure that a number of women is guaranteed a seat in, be it at the parliament or at the local level. But at electoral systems, for example, in Kosovo, when we had a system of elections with closed lists, political parties used to manipulate this a lot, because when there are closed lists, you can't really tell will Paddy get the seat at the assembly, because it's not Paddy that decides. It's basically the leader of political parties. And I'm not sure about your countries, but in Kosovo, most of the leaders of political parties are men, so they tend to basically play with numbers and also play with the representation. So reserve seat and mandatory quotas in local governments have made a difference. From what we have seen. Challenges to women's representations. There are cultural barriers. We're going to talk about those, not only representation at the parliament, and also spoke about the representation at mandatory committees, be it at the policy and finance committees or any other committee that works in issues at local level. Patriarchal norms, be it in Balkans as well. We have this, that not many women are motivated by their spouses in order to run for office. Resistance to women in leadership roles. in many communities. I guess this is global. Political obstacles, we have discussed few of those, and one of those might be legislative political obstacles that women face, lack of financial resources to support women candidates. As I said, most political leaders of political parties hold responsibilities, and they hold their finances close, so they probably don't want to share those women with women. Violence, intimidation. We have seen this in some occasions regionally and also in Kosovo. Kosovo has 38 municipalities, and only 2 women are elected as mayors. So it's not even close to 10%, and there have been excellent candidates, if you ask me, running, but they just could not compete with the power and financial resources that the man had. So yes, could we go further with the impact of women representation? These are the few positive outcomes. Yes.
Artan, do you think we could wrap up in the next 3 minutes?
Yes, more inclusive decision making. They talk about gender sensitivity, improved governance, transparency, gender responsive policies. So what we basically recommend is implementing and enforcing gender quotas, supporting women's leadership training and capacity building, ensuring safe and supportive environments for women in politics. We discussed about challenges and we see that it's imperative. I'm not sure about the presence of the UN agencies or EU funds in the countries where you come from, but this has been really an important change maker in Kosovo, in Albania, especially with the European Union funds and with the accession process of the countries within the European Union, and financial and technical support for gender focused. So good experiences in Balkans, European tools, such as European Charter for Equality of Women and Men. I know this can't be applied globally. This is a European sort of practice, but this could be translated into, let's just say, an African tool on equality of men and women. So it's really a useful tool. Increasing by law the quotas, as we said, from 30% to 50%, strengthening the councils, alliances of different levels of governments, as we spoke, youth, alliances of women, alliances of the women councillors. In Kosovo, for example, we have women caucuses at the Parliament of Kosovo, and then we have women caucuses at the local level. But sadly enough, they never get to meet together and speak. I mean, their objective is the same, but they simply don't get together. Building, strengthening girls, young women, and women's capacities to better perform when they're elected. Basically, building capacities at local and central level. What we have seen, Paddy, is that few women that were leaders at the local level, they fast make it to the Parliament of Kosovo. So we rarely see a woman that goes straight to the Parliament of Kosovo or to the Parliament of Albania. So by building their capacities at local level, it has shown that their way at the central level politics is sort of facilitated. Basically, women's representation is crucial for achieving gender equality. Progress has been made, but challenges remain. Supporting an initiative that empower women as voters. What we have been working on, Paddy was also working with the groups of vulnerable communities, such as the handicapped. There are associations of the people handicapped and people with disabilities. So we've been working also with them in order to empower, because if women generally face these obstacles in local decision-making processes, imagine people with disabilities who could not move from point A to point B. What we try to do with Monica all the time is that we try to understand root causes, and it's so much different. Kosovo is really a small country, but you could see from a municipality to a municipality the differences in thinking. For example, in one municipality which is really small and has only, let's just say, 10,000 inhabitants, there you really could push for advocacy, push for ideas, and push for suggestions. But when you go to a bigger municipality, which is probably 10 times, you see resistance. You see and there we try to understand, the root causes of that, and why people try to work pro or against it. So yes, Paddy, these are our contacts, and we will probably, Paddy, you can freely share the presentation. And honestly, presenting this much in 15 minutes is it stresses me out. But we would like to hear now questions, because Monica.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. Artan, I think that the challenge of giving a lecturer, and I know this from my very limited years of experience in teaching, in trying to give you 15 minutes to deliver over 20 years of experience is not easy, and combined together with what Monica and you have put
mechanisms
together.
We could use.
Thank you, Artan, and sorry that we had to rush you through the presentation amid some of the technical challenges, but we wanted to make sure that we can have also an opportunity. Thank you for raising some of these very critical issues, and hoping that maybe we can take just a segue. I know we have said we will have questions and answers a bit later, but also to just welcome everyone. I noted that there's a lot of different people joining from Bolivia, Ghana, Uganda, Tanzania, United Kingdom, Kenya, Taiwan, South Africa, North Macedonia, Cameroon, and Pakistan, and now India. I see is in the room, Germany, because this is where I'm also sitting, and I think we also have colleagues joining from Zambia. Thank you so much for being here. And so this is the point in which, if there was any clarity that you're looking for, Monica is here, Artan is here, to get a sense of where do you see what triggers with you. And if the questions are not coming now, that's also okay. I will give it a minute to see. Please feel free to share with us in the chat questions that you may have. I see there's already a hand, so I hand it over. Jacqueline, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It was a quick one. When Artan gave the difference, the figures, there was at one point when he referred to Nordic, and if I'm not mistaken, he talked about the policy in Nordic, and that was what caused high women participation. However, when he gave the same reference to Sub-Saharan, it was Rwanda, where we have 61%. And he quoted that this is because of the gender quotas and international pressure. Now, how do you compare the difference for Rwanda being international pressure and for the Nordic being due to strong gender equality policies? How do you, where do you get, how do you compare the two to have the different answers? Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Monica, did you want to take that up? Monica, if you just unmute.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I closed my video because something was going wrong with my connection. If I understood correctly the question, the data that we are providing in this presentation are taken from the UN Women, sorry, UN Women database, and from the researches that are conducted in different countries. The reason why this was pointed out in our presentation, is because sometimes there is a culture and a tradition of a country that tells us a lot what is happening. In the Sweden, for example, this issue of gender equality has not been advanced because of quota, but because of all tradition and culture and everything that they used to do for I don't know, for years now. So for them, the model of having women in the leadership position is quite normal. In other countries, including in Balkan countries, but also in other countries, we have seen that in some communities, it's even today very difficult to talk for the model of women in leadership. So the data provided, I'm repeating, are based on the results from different researches and reports conducted from UN Women and UN countries and UN agencies globally. While what we see in the reality is that in some communities, because of changing in the tradition, because of the models, because of the culture, because of the open-minded of the people and alliances that they have created, speaking for women in leadership position is much more easier than in other countries. And this is something that has happened also in Albania. Artan highlighted, for example, in Balkan, that Albania is really advancing on this, and there is a lot of progress, especially with women in the central government. We have 66% of women ministers, which is quite a lot. But we are still facing a lot of challenges. And we come from a country when, in our tradition, years ago, women were not even allowed to speak in front of the men. So in some villages or in some areas in our country, we have had the tradition of burnesha, meaning a woman was allowed to speak in front of the man only if she was taking all the responsibilities of a man, meaning in that family there were not sons born, so the father, the head of the family, was decided to one of her daughters, who was more stronger than others, to play the role of the man in the family. So only few women were allowed to be part of the man discussions, of the man councils on that time. And now we are speaking for women that are leading our government. So it's not so easy. It's a process. It takes time. But the culture and the way how we are working in different areas, it's so much important. So we have to consider the place of the women in the government, especially at the local level, as a normal standard, not as a favor that men are doing to women. So I think this is important. And I also want to highlight from what Artan said in our presentation that there are a lot of strategies. Usually we refer to Nordic countries as successful ones for women in leadership. However, not all successful strategies of a country can function in other countries. This is also even inside the country. For example, inside Albania, we don't work with the same approaches in all the cities or the regions of Albania, because we know how to start the discussion and where to put our efforts when we speak for empowering women voice. Sometimes we have to focus on women only and strengthen their voices and understand which are the points that they want to highlight, and building trust in themselves for being part of decision-making processes, and then to work with women and men of the community to accept this reality and to support women to be part of the government. And the last thing I want to say for now, because I know that we are running out of time, but I hope later we will have time to share much more things, is that we have not only to support women, but we have also to give credit to what women in decision-making are doing, especially at the local level. Because coming from a reality that was so difficult to be part of the governance, and now judging, for example, them that, oh, they are now there, but they are doing nothing, this is not fair with them. I'm speaking again, I'm referring to my country. When we have those changes, 50% of quota at the local level, we were expecting immediately a change. So now that we're having 50% of women, for example, in the Municipal Council of Tirana, we are not seeing any difference. No. That's not true. We are witnessing changes, improvements every day. But if we want to measure the impact of women presence at the local level, then we need to give time to them to change and to put in place the entire system, because it's a system functioning. It's not only a person or some persons that are doing the change. They have to fight against the barriers. They have to put in order the all parts of the system in order to see, the sustainable changes and effectiveness as a result of their presence in the government. So that's all for the moment, and I hope we will have opportunities later.
Monica, thank you so much for bringing out these nuances and for addressing that particular question. And I think it's being resounded also in the chat, as I can see. There also is another question that's being raised, and I hope that we will open up the discussion a bit later and also encourage colleagues from West Africa, as the question in the chat is around that. But also on touching on some of the issues as we call onto our panel. So moving on to the panel, and again, to just thank Artan and Monica for that enlightenment and zooming into the Balkans. We will now introduce two of our panelists that are, really going to be like discussants, speaking from a Latin American perspective. Very happy to have Maria Eugenia Rojas, and she is from Bolivia and is a defender of women's political rights and has worked around public service management, promoting community development, partnership, participation, but also working a lot with municipalities in terms of planning. And all this work has centered around looking at, gender, female associate activism, which is a new word I've kind of learned, bringing together associations and activism, and as well as looking at municipal development. And as the executive director of the Association of Bolivian Council of Women, she's obviously been working a lot around how do you contribute to the body of research in terms of quantitative and qualitative development of women's participation at the local level. Maria Eugenia, we are really glad that you are here joining us so early in the morning, and that you will be able to share with us quite a lot. I'll give you questions in a little while. And Maria will be speaking to us in Spanish, so please turn on your interpretation if you can, if your Spanish is not as good as mine. And then we also have on the panel today Gertrude Rose Gamuera Boiña, who is the Secretary General for the East African County and Local Governments Association. The organization is based out of Arusha in Tanzania, and she is also the coordinator for the Commonwealth Local Government Forum Office for East Africa, which is also hosted by her organization. And a very extensive CV, including over 25 years of working in the area of local governance at the public sector management level, but also as a coordinator, and particularly being driven in making these linkages from a collaborative perspective. And she also holds onto other responsibilities there, particularly of importance is the Hub for Stronger Cities and Network, and from East and Southern Region Hub, which really tries to look at how do you look at issues around oversight on implementation, but also really looking at how do you have a stronger engagement from cities in the East and Southern Africa region. Gertrude and Maria, really happy to have you here with us. And in terms of some guiding questions, I'm sure you have heard from the presentation that has been made, also some comments right around quotas. So in the conversations that we've had before, we tried to coin a few perspectives that you would like to share with us. But maybe I kick it off with Maria and say, Maria, in providing for us this kind of snapshot of where you're sitting in Latin America and where women's empowerment is like, what evidence can you share with us on what seems to be working strategies, and what limits do you see in terms of, what spaces do you see that actually limit the participation of women at the political level locally? Over to you, María.
Muy buenos días a todas y todos. Muy agradecida de la invitación. Realmente me encuentro muy feliz de poder compartir las experiencias desde la región latinoamericana. He estado trabajando justamente a nivel municipal durante más de una década con las mujeres justamente en la participación política. Desde ese conocimiento, pues también he logrado trabajar en diversos países, justamente y muchas veces llevando la experiencia boliviana. Me encuentro en La Paz, Bolivia, en el corazón justamente de Latinoamérica. Bien, en esta parte del mundo, en la región latinoamericana, el empoderamiento de las mujeres no se puede explicar si no se conoce también el contexto y todo el proceso que se ha venido llevando durante las últimas décadas, ¿no? A partir de los años 90, saltándome un poco el tema del voto, ¿no es cierto? Cuando decía mi antecesora, ¿no es cierto? Cuando estábamos como votantes, ¿no? En la década de los 40, 50 en la región latinoamericana y posteriormente los periodos dictatoriales en los 60 y 70 e inflacionarios con la apertura del mercado ya en la época neoliberal en los 80, se dan procesos justamente de reformas de descentralización en los años 90. Es el periodo en que los países de toda la región, por ejemplo, Ecuador, Colombia, Perú, ¿no? Y otros promueven la participación de las mujeres en los niveles locales, municipales. En Bolivia específicamente se promueve la ley de participación popular que incluye justamente una división territorial municipal de 84 municipios que al día de hoy, por ejemplo, hemos pasado de 100 a 200 y actualmente contamos con 342 municipios, ¿no? Y en los cuales se van insertando paulatinamente las mujeres como concejalas y alcaldesas. Entonces, posteriormente se promueven acciones positivas como la cuota, ¿no? Que también es adoptada en toda la región, ¿no? Casi en todos los países. Y después la adopción de nuestros países del compromiso post-Beijing, ya como elegibles, es decir, como candidatas, ¿no? Entonces, todos estos procesos o estos resultados, especialmente hacia lo que llamamos hoy día la democracia paritaria, ha sido una consecuencia justamente de la transformación de estos cambios sociopolíticos y económicos, no solo en Bolivia, sino en toda la región. ¿No? Entonces, en búsqueda de este logro de la paridad de género en los gobiernos locales, que son justamente la pieza fundamental, ¿no es cierto?, de la creciente participación de las mujeres en la vida pública, en la democracia paritaria, ¿no es cierto? Sin embargo, esta paridad o el ejercicio justamente paritario del poder de la toma de decisiones de las mujeres está lejos de lograrse, ¿no? Tanto a nivel de gobiernos nacionales como locales. Sí se ha logrado avanzar con la norma, se ha logrado tener un marco legislativo interesante, tanto en Bolivia como en otros países. Sin embargo, las brechas, ¿no? Los nudos estructurales que refuerzan normas, prácticas y políticas discriminatorias perpetúan justamente estas dinámicas de poder que están justamente masculinizadas y dominadas por los hombres, ¿no? En la región de América Latina y el Caribe no es la excepción, ¿no? Sigue siendo un reto garantizar justamente la participación plena y efectiva de las mujeres y la igualdad de oportunidades de liderazgo, ¿no? En todos los niveles de la toma de decisiones en la vida política, económica y pública, ¿no? De acuerdo con la meta 5 de los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible, por ejemplo, y en función a la Conferencia Regional de las Mujeres en América Latina del Caribe, se han avanzado como 45 años en el desarrollo de una agenda regional de género que guía justamente las políticas públicas, las acciones y las decisiones. Este ha sido un instrumento interesante, esta agenda pública regional, que es como una hoja de ruta que marca justamente el seguimiento, ¿no es cierto?, a la participación de las mujeres, que garantice justamente su participación en cargos públicos y de representación política, ¿no? Hasta alcanzar esta democracia paritaria que se tiene y se obtiene en algunos países de la región como Bolivia, ¿no? Esta agenda justamente reconoce la importancia de la producción estadística sobre la representación de las mujeres en la vida política, ¿no? Como resultado, ¿no es cierto?, la autonomía de las mujeres en la toma de decisiones ha sido monitoreada a través de esta agenda, a través de estos entes supranacionales, ¿no es cierto?, en América Latina, y mediante una serie de indicadores en la representación de las mujeres, tanto en los órganos ejecutivos y legislativos de los gobiernos nacionales y locales, municipales. Por ejemplo, el indicador 551B de los ODS está relacionado a la representación de las mujeres en los gobiernos locales. Observamos a través de esto que es inferior en la región, comparando a nivel global y con el mundo, ¿no? A enero del 2023, por ejemplo, las mujeres ocupaban el 27% de los puestos electos en órganos deliberativos locales en la región, frente al 35% a nivel mundial. La representación de las mujeres en América Latina y el Caribe ocupa también el quinto lugar entre otras regiones, ¿no? Siendo superada por Asia Central, Meridional, Europa, América del Norte, Australia, Nueva Zelanda, Asia Oriental y Sudoriental. Entonces, en este marco, la tasa de aumento de la representación de las mujeres en América Latina y el Caribe es ligeramente superior, 0,8% en comparación al 0,5% porcentual a nivel mundial, ¿no? Sin embargo, a la tasa del progreso actual es poco probable que la región alcance el promedio del mundo o cumpla la meta de paridad de género para el 2030. Entonces, creo que la meta común adoptada a nivel internacional, a partir de la plataforma de acción de Beijing, es lograr la participación política y la distribución equilibrada. Entre la evidencia y entre los factores determinantes para explicar de manera resumida dichos avances en la región, responde justamente a tres factores identificados. Primero, los movimientos feministas y las redes de mujeres políticas han sumado fuerzas justamente para influir en los parlamentos y en los gobiernos locales, ¿no? Mediante la formación de bancadas, de mesas de mujeres parlamentarias, redes de mujeres autoridades municipales y otros movimientos de mujeres políticas que, superando barreras partidistas e ideológicas, han apostado justamente para alcanzar consensos y hacer de la agenda de género una causa común, contribuyendo a concienciar a la opinión pública. En la región tenemos organizaciones como la AMUME, que es la Asociación de Mujeres Ecuatorianas Municipalistas, la ACOBOL, que es la Asociación de Concejalas y Alcaldesas de Bolivia, y una serie de organizaciones a nivel regional, e inclusive la FLACMA, que tiene un capítulo de género. FLACMA es la Federación de Municipios a nivel de Latinoamérica y el Caribe, ¿no? Entonces, estas organizaciones, estas redes de mujeres, estas redes municipalistas mixtas han promovido justamente esta participación de las mujeres y su empoderamiento. Los marcos normativos e institucionales han sido también motores para acelerar las políticas públicas que promueven los derechos de las mujeres y la igualdad de género, ¿no? Con un fuerte compromiso regional que está plasmado en la ratificación de la Convención sobre la eliminación de todas las formas de discriminación, que es la CEDAW, ¿no? Y obviamente esto a partir del reconocimiento, ¿no es cierto?, de estas conferencias en nuestros países. Finalmente está también la inclusión de las acciones afirmativas, sobre todo mediante la adopción de las cuotas de género en las legislaciones de diversos países. Y como mencionábamos en los últimos años, la apuesta por medidas que conduzcan a la paridad, ¿no? Ese 50%. En Bolivia, específicamente, tenemos a nivel de municipios más del 50% en la participación de las mujeres. Sin embargo, a nivel de alcaldías, de alcaldesas, de mujeres alcaldesas, no se supera el 10%. Entonces, bien, a nivel regional, no todas las legislaciones incluyen los mismos requisitos para su efectividad, ¿no? Como serían sanciones claras, por ejemplo, a los partidos por incumplimiento, ni tienen en cuenta factores determinantes que están ligados a sistemas electorales en el que se aplican, ¿no? Sin embargo, el debate está muy presente. Pese a todos estos avances positivos, la participación política de las mujeres es muy heterogénea en la región. Coexisten situaciones muy dispares entre los países al interior de cada país. Según el Programa de Naciones Unidas para el Desarrollo en Latinoamérica, el porcentaje de las mujeres alcaldesas no supera aún ahora entre el 10 al 15% y de las concejalas entre el 25 y 30%. Es también preocupante el acoso y la violencia política que sufren las mujeres, ¿no? Y el hecho de que solo Bolivia se haya dotado de una legislación integral para prevenir y erradicar este fenómeno. Entonces, podemos decir que el diagnóstico en general no es muy satisfactorio, sin embargo, la participación política de las mujeres está alejada del objetivo de la paridad efectiva, ¿no? Las mujeres en realidad no deciden a la par con los hombres dentro de los órganos legislativos o decisorios, digamos, de los consejos municipales y tampoco a nivel nacional.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Maria. And I know it's not easy to provide a snapshot in such a short time, but I think it's also reflective of some of the comments that are coming in the chat. And actually, as a subsequent question for later, after we open the chat, would be really interesting to hear more questions around entry and retention. Because as you have mentioned, the numbers are there. Basically, the quotas have been provided. Some are not even, you're not able to fill those up, but we can also talk a little bit more about the quality in terms of connecting also to what Monica has had shared earlier on. How do we make sure we've got those that are mentored, as said in the chat by Jamida, but then also how do we ensure that they're retained, that you can sustain a women's participation in the political level at the local level as well. So it will be very nice to hear from you a little bit later on after we have opened the chat in some of the strategy that seem to be working from there. Gertrude, I wonder if we could just come to you from the East African community or from the East African perspective. And how you unpack for us some of the challenges that are emerging in women's delivery of elected women's mandates. But I'm also being conscious of what Monica had said, just because we've put them there, we want to see results. What does it actually take in terms of women leaders who've navigated these complexities? Also talking a little bit more about how you see how they're navigating the difference, the issues around political party interests, and on the other side, trying to serve the constituency that they represent. Gertrude, some responses to these questions?
Yeah, thank you, Paddy. And I'd like to thank the previous speakers for their great presentations. But I thought I'd loop in with a little bit of hope in that we've come a long way and we are getting there. We just need to change strategy here and there, and we'll get the more women getting into leadership positions. So greetings from East Africa. And specifically, I'd also love to greet and thank colleagues from the region who have joined in on the call. I know we have one very powerful lady, a lady mayor on call, Regina, who we are very proud of from East Africa. So I look forward to her enriching what I have to share. I haven't been a woman political leader, but I've had an opportunity to work with them and observe their environment and see how the changes have come onto table over the years. So I feel pretty confident in sharing with the working group some ideas of what we've seen, what could be done better in my view. And I'll start by acknowledging a few milestones in our region. We have a woman president, for crying out loud, in Tanzania, and that is a pat on the back. Tanzania has come a very long way to push that one woman from the bottom right to the top, and we need to keep her there. We've got a woman speaker in parliament in Uganda and a vice president. That is quite a bit of work that has gone into the efforts of women, and perhaps those are some strategies we might look into. We have a great G7 caucus coming in. Women governors in Kenya, they're beginning to rise up and speak and say, we need more voice, more representation, more numbers, and we are here to mentor our fellow women. So this is it. This is how we're going to keep them in place, by having such a force rise up. But of course, Rwanda, they've talked about Rwanda. Wonderful results at national level. We could do better because I think they are one spot shy, for example, of having the 30% of women at local government level. But we are getting there. And in terms of what we need to do, going beyond the quotas, looking at the quality, I think that there are various one or two, three things I think that can work, which we need to look at and interrogate further. Issues around support systems that can keep the women going up this ladder, deliberate identification of these women leaders and giving them the space, giving them the platforms to showcase what they have to offer. And only these can be provided by organizations such as ourselves, fellow women network platforms, and platforms, global entities like the UN Women, to continue building their capacities to be able to speak out, build their confidence levels, show their leadership capabilities. Once they're out there in that space speaking, they will be visible, they will be seen, and therefore there will be confidence from others to come forward. By putting them out there, you're also role modeling. They become role models, and we need to pick them, create a database of building them into mentors so that we have women mentorship programs for women in leadership. That way, I think we can be able to maintain and go beyond the quotas, beyond the laws. For example, in East Africa, we've been very good with the laws, but when you look further down, we're not doing very well because they get filtered at the top. The numbers are there at the bottom, but as we go higher, they get filtered. In Uganda, you have 3 women district chairpersons out of how many? 145, you know? That's not very good. So we need to get the bigger numbers coming up there, right up to the topmost level. So we need to mentor them. We need to role model. We need to give them platform and spaces, encourage them to network. We need to give them the information. These women need data and statistics to use as they speak out, as they go out to the community. I'm going to take advantage of Mayor Regina being in this space today. I know she's one lady who is always in search of information. And when she gets that information, she takes it back to her municipality and uses it. I've seen her at work. But how she gets it is because she's been exposed to platforms where she can have access to that information. So we need to be able to provide them with the right information they need in their offices on the various matters they deal with, be it health, be it education, so that they go back and they can be able to integrate that in their leadership roles and mandates at the local government level. Of course, we can't forget what Monica, I like what Monica ended with. Give credit to what the women are doing. We don't shout enough. I think I've tried to scan the landscape to say who is out there, who keeps profiling these women. How do we, pat their backs so loud that people know that something is good happening from a woman leader in local government so that others can learn from that. We are not telling their stories enough. Can we invest in initiatives that tell their stories, that profile them? I think the Commonwealth Local Government Women Platform Forum tries to do that, but they need a little bit of more push in there, and we need to bring it down to our regions as well so that we can showcase what the women are there. We can tell the world that the women are here and they're actually able. We need the men's clubs to join us because we come from highly patriarchal societies and we are traditionalists. Definitely I know all of us on this call know that our women leaders fail this resistance. They get into these offices. I, for one, have been blessed to be part of boardrooms. And many times I walk into a boardroom, many instances I've found myself alone there with the men. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to navigate this number. It is not easy. So we need to make sure.
I think we lost Gertrude.
Yeah, I think we lost Gertrude briefly. Let's see when she comes on. Thank you again for all the questions that are streaming in. And Gertrude, if you can hear us, maybe you could mute your video and then we could hear the last bits of your intervention. But I think absolutely enlightening from both our discussants on the panel in giving us the Latin America and the East African perspective on what it means and some of the working strategies, but I think also very practical measures that Gertrude was trying to outline just in the last parts of her intervention in how we go towards retaining this particular space and how we really, and I like the last words there, the kind of navigating the room of men, navigating the numbers and what that means for women leaders in entry, but also in terms of sustaining their journey in the political system. We wondered that if this would be a very good juncture, and we will come back to our panelists in a bit, we can hear from you. There's been many questions that have been raised, but just before we open the panel, I'm grateful to Gertrude for having given us the attention that we actually have a very prominent leader who is the mayor of a municipality in Uganda, that is in East Africa, here with us. And I wonder whether Mayor Regina Bakite, if you are able to unmute. I know we're really putting you on the spot, but maybe to share with us what you think, this gathering here is about women's participation at the local level. So maybe you could share with us from your own perspective, what have been some of those working strategies for you and for those you pull into your inner circle of women in the political circle. Mayor Regina, is it possible to hear from you?
I think she has left.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will try. Okay, so in that case, maybe we will have another opportunity. Some questions have indeed been asked. Did anybody just want to, by raise of hands, because that's much easier for us to navigate, we're just going to now open up for questions and answers, and we will come back to our panel before we close so that they could respond to some of the questions. We can give them plenty of questions indeed, but we would like to hear from you. It may not be a question. It could also be you reflecting on where you are coming from. I mentioned quite a long list of countries, of people who are coming from different countries represented here in this room. So that would be great to hear from you. I would just look by raise of hands, but also take the opportunity to look into the room to see if we can get any feedback. While we're waiting.
Mwanawani Shetty.
Okay, I could not see the gallery.
Hello.
Okay, Mwanawani, yes. Go ahead,
Yes,
please.
thank you for this opportunity. My name is Mwanawani Shetty. I am the municipal manager for Kwale, Kenya, and the vice chairperson for Association of Cities and Municipal Managers in Kenya. Just a quick one. As a municipal manager, it's a political position in nature. I would like to find out what is the strategies the UN women are having so that they can link the elected women governors in Kenya and the women municipal managers, because currently we are 22 women municipal managers out of 107 urban areas. That represents at around 20%. So we'll appreciate if UN can come in and link us up and recognize the female municipal managers in Kenya. And then another one is if we can come up with a twin city whereby one municipality can twin up with another municipality, so that which is being led by a fellow women, so that we can co-share and be able to share challenges, and we manage to support one another. That is my humble request. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I know we've got many participants joining from different organizations as well. So it would be interesting to hear if you indeed have any partnership opportunities, as Mwanawani has shared, around twinning, but also in terms of promoting and recognition of women working at that local level. Please feel free to share in the chat and also to be able to respond to some initiatives you know. Florence, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm happy to be here this evening. I'm Florence Namayanja. I'm a female mayor in Uganda, in Masaka City. I happen to be the only female mayor of a city. We are faced with the challenges as local government leaders. And I would like this space to respond to the challenges of women leaders, because it will go a long way in empowering us with the skills of leadership. That's what I want.
Thank you so much for sharing in those reflections. I think the part, maybe just to respond to part of that, the platform that we have here, it's actually a working group. It's a thematic working group that looks at gender equity and women's empowerment. And we do feel like as a first step, being part of this community is one important way of us seeing the visibility of different efforts around the space, but also understanding the different partnerships that are there. So we'd really be glad for more members to join us. I think the link has been shared. It's free membership, and we meet occasionally and centered around thematic areas and women's empowerment being an important part of this working group. So as a first step, at least from our side, we can open that door. Regina, thanks for sharing in the chat, and I give you the floor to share also over the audio. If you just unmute your mic, Regina. Please go ahead, Regina. We can hear you. Just come closer to your microphone. Okay. Thank you for the reflection, Regina. We cannot hear you, but please, Gertrude, thank you for letting us know that you're back. Perhaps we can just circle it back a little bit to the panelists, and then I will ask also Artan, Monica, and Maria to just open your videos as we sort of have a bit of a panelist chat here. A lot of questions have indeed been raised. I wouldn't do justice in terms of trying to bring it up, but I think issues around quotas, are they effective? Where have you seen them effective? Can we look beyond quotas are some of the questions that are being raised. But also in talking about very practical tools, which of course have been shared, but is there also a way in which we can talk about very specific examples from local governments themselves on how they're promoting increased women participation at that subnational level and those lower levels of subnational governments? Because as you have shared, all the panelists, there seem to be some challenges depending on the context. One in women scaling up. Artan did a presentation where he showed us also just in terms of the committees that women are involved in. So where are we seeing some of these things that could really be turning keys for us to open and unlock certain doors that still seem to be restricted for women's more effective participation? I will circle it back to you, Gertrude, to respond to any parts of this. And then maybe Artan, you can come back on. I see a hand from Juliet. Juliet, I'll ask for your indulgence just for Gertrude to share, and I will come to you.
Yeah, and thank you so much. And I must apologize, members and participants, for the interruption. Power outage issues, but I'm back. So quotas, are they still relevant? A big yes, very big yes. They're still relevant. We need them to keep pushing those numbers up. Also, we need to work around policies that move beyond these quotas. Policies that encourage institutional environments and structures and systems that open up to not just limiting the one third being influenced, but making them productive, making them effective and impactful. There's a little bit of feedback from somewhere. If they can switch off their microphones. We need to have the women. For example, you are looking for examples where things have worked. I know that we may not point out a specific local government or city that it has an innovative approach to making sure that we have the women in leadership get more voice and representation. But I know that there are networks, women leader networks, that have invested time and energy in helping fellow women leaders step up. We have the referrals at the continental level, UCL.
We seem to have lost Gertrude. Juliet, did you just want to
LG
come in
Africa
with
has a
your...
big
Okay,
referral
she's back.
network that is going on. I've already mentioned in Kenya, we have the G7 Women Governors Caucus coming up. That is then we have... Yes, you had lost me. So I was saying that the women networks have been quite useful and instrumental to build the capacities and leadership capabilities. And so we... Okay. So I think I'm still circling around the issue of capacity building for leadership, making sure that these women are supported to make sure that we have more women representatives on board in local governments and beyond. We need to make sure that we have instances where we have women to the national level. We need to get those women to mentor and hold hands for the women at local government level so that we encourage the capacity building of young women leaders to get into decision-making positions. So there has to be a deliberate initiative around mentoring, role modeling. This is, for me, what I see, issues around telling their stories, shouting about their milestones, and also helping them with information packages to support their advocacy and leadership roles. I'll stop at that for now and allow others to come on, other panelists to come on.
Thank you very much, Gertrude, for those open doors as well in terms of information. And I think it relates to one of the questions that was asked while we had some connection issues on your side. Juliet, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I just want to share some experiences we have in West Africa. I'm Regional Director for West Africa for United Cities and Local Governments of Africa. So if you notice, in Cameroon, for example, at the subnational level, we have governors. But since independence, we've never had any female governor in Cameroon. And I ask why, and honestly, no one is able to say why we don't have any female governors in 1960 in Cameroon. In Ghana, similarly, when we had 10 regions in Ghana, we just had one female regional minister. Then they redemarcated the territory and made it 16 regions. Then we had 2 female regional ministers. Then I keep asking, but why? And if you ask why, how are they appointed, you realize that there is no written rules that will guide the appointment even of these women. So you realize that there is even no political will for these women to get into leadership positions. But we have been advocating for the increase of women. We've done all kinds of things with the support of the United Nations system, but it is not working. So I realized that just this advocacy is not enough. First of all, we must have political will. Where does it begin? It begins from the political parties. We can say the women don't have money, we women don't, but if the political parties sign up to have women come up, they will do everything to come up. Let me give you one example. Still in West Africa, Senegal. How did they do it? We have 47% representative of women at the local level in Senegal. How did they do it? It's at the level of the political parties. It is not so much how much money women can come up with, and they don't have money, they don't have education and all those kinds of things. They lack confidence, they're afraid of bullying and all those things. It is because the women who were the activists went straight. Their point was on to tackle the political parties. So now they said, okay, any political party that cannot have 50-50 representation of women is out of the game. So because you want to be in the game, you are forced to get the 50-50 representation of women. So I do think that the political will is critical. Because there, if we say we should have 50-50, and I like the first presentation where they said there should be the interpretation of the word gender equality. That is an English word. We just brought it in as a technical concept, but it is an English word. Can we start by interpreting the English language there? And I am happy that they're taking it to the courts So when they interpret it, then everybody sees and it is clear in everybody's mind what it is. Then we start applying the concept after that interpretation. That first, the first presenter, I think I like the way he put it out there with in Kosovo, yeah. I think it's in Kosovo. So I like that. So I'm saying that we need to start looking at this issue from the point of view of where we will have to talk to the political parties to do something so that before you go in for elections, you must be able to have that representation. Where we don't have elections and we are still pushing for decentralization, to advance, the government that is appointing should also have that political, that commitment to have that representation. So that's what I want to share for now.
Thank you so much, Mama Julia, for sharing that with us from your space and the very critical experience. I pass the floor to Artan. Maybe, Artan, you could speak to us a little bit more from that local government support perspective. I know there's a lot that's been said about quotas. Monica, as well, in terms of, I think you touched on some critical issues that have been asked around, how long does it take? I mean, you were asked some questions, how long does it take? And I know you've been going about it in the chat as well, and touching other elements. And then Maria could also close with us with some remarks from your side in relation to the question around retention. Over to you, Artan.
Yes, Paddy, thank you. I mean, interesting questions, interesting insights. And I just referring to the last speaker, yes, women, there should be a 50-50% in place, but our experience shows that if that 50-50% is not a legal requirement, basically, these politicians always find a way of diverging the flow of water, sort of say. But what we have personally
We seem to have lost Artan. Monica, did you want to take it up?
Yes, thank you very much. I was trying to provide some kind of answers in the chat because it's a bit difficult trying to listening what other speakers were saying, which was really important, and also going through all the comments in the chat. However, I'm starting from that question, how long does it take? I mean, I can't provide you the exact number of the months or years that it takes. Personally, I want to be positive. I have 25 years of experience now working on those issues. And as I shared with you even before, in my country, although now we have so much success, I have been witnessing situations on which women, even inside the families, because I'm trying to link with also with comments that were made from other countries, even inside the families, sometimes women were not allowed even to speak. And now we are thinking how to improve the women's participation at the local and the central level. It takes time. It depends on the level of the effort that we pay to change the attitudes of the people, to improve the mentality, and on the approach that we select. If we want to fight against everyone that doesn't accept women as representatives of local governance, this will be not a good battle. We cannot fight against everyone. We have to fight against the stereotypes, but we have also to create alliances, including men alliances, men champions that support gender equality. And in addition, we have to improve the legislation. We have to ensure the implementation, the correct implementation of the legislation in place. We have to consider the good models and the samples from other countries, but we have to make them appropriate and working for our own societies, for our own communities. So saying this, it takes time. And I repeat, and I say that although I'm more in favor of opening discussion and debates among women and men together, I still prefer to work with women separately when this is needed for specific topics. And in this case, we have to empower women themselves. They need to find trust inside themselves. They need to listen from others that yes, they can do it. Yes, they are doing, because they are struggling every day. Women are multitasking in everyday life. And the same, they reflect even when they are in the governance, because this is the reason why we highlighted in our presentation, when women are more part of the local governance, we see this approach of leaving no one behind implemented in the local governance, because they think not for themselves, but they think for their kids, they think for their for the elderly people, for the sick person. So they try to cover everything that they do even in their reality inside their families. So yes, it takes time. Yes, sometimes it looks like we are spending so much time and energy and money and everything, and there is no progress. But believe me, the progress is there. The progress is even when we have one more voice joining. You see, try to think positively. I know that this is very difficult. Even in Albania, that I'm highlighting that we are having so much progress, you know, women here are killed, sometimes for nothing. Why you look at in my eyes? Why you turned late home? Can you imagine? So it doesn't mean that we have achieved this progress and now everything is fine. Even in my country, we are struggling every day. Sometimes we judge those women that are providing good models by saying, but look, who knows how this lady is achieving this position? Maybe she's pleasing the head of the political party. And you know, what does this mean? Or will she be a good wife, a good mother, now that she is in the politics? So we are facing different realities every day. We are struggling with violence against women. Now that we have this technology advancement, we are facing also this internet violence. You know, it's a lot of things that we are trying to struggle and to face every day. But we need to build trust, and we need to believe that our mission is the correct one. Yes, women deserve to be in the governance at the central, at the local level. They deserve to be there. It's their, I mean, it's their place there. And we need to support women. Don't judge women that are in the leadership position. As I mentioned, sometimes we want results to be in 3 days. Oh, now we have women there,
Absolutely.
which is the change? No. We need to take time for change, because everyone needs time to change, even something. Think about yourself. If you want to change something, the results will not be in 2 days. But yes, of course, there will be in a year, in 2 years. And the support is so much important. One of the ladies asked what UN Women can do. I try to provide an answer in the chat. Of course, I can't speak in the name of UN Women because I'm a consultant. However, I have seen the difference of the support that UN Women has provided in my country. You can establish those alliances, those groups of women. However, they need, a kind of push to remain alive. And UN Women is doing exactly this in my country. So every time that there is, for example, a critical moment, like a discussion for a new law, or a report that the state is doing in the frame of international convention. Recently, we had the report for the Beijing Platform for Action in the frame of Beijing 30 conference that will be next year. So every time that there are those critical moments, UN Women is supporting the central or the local government to revitalize those alliances. And I remember the last discussion we had with the women MPs in Albania, it was at the end of May, in the frame of Beijing report. Although when they came, they were like, now the minister, which is from the Socialist Party elected, has invited us. So let's see what is happening politically. This was their attitude. Believe me, when they entered, they were like, let's see whose members of the party are here. But when we start to discuss on the Beijing platform, critical issues, what was happening in Albania, they completely forgot their parties. And they started to be focused altogether what they can do. So these are very important actions that we can undertake in our daily efforts to increase the women participation at central or local governance. Of course, I might have a lot of things to share, but I want to leave the floor to others. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Monica. And very briefly also, Maria, if you could share with us before we run to a close, we had asked for some extra time and we see that people are falling off the call. So maybe, Maria, if you could share with us some reflections very briefly.
Sí, sí, muchas gracias. Bien, entre algunas reflexiones que he estado escuchando y me parece que es importante compartirlas, es que si bien hemos avanzado, y vuelvo a aquello, en la igualdad formal, relacionado justamente a las normas, a las leyes, que han promovido a la par la participación política de las mujeres porque ha sido justamente el mecanismo que más se ha empleado y se ha implementado acá en la región. En Bolivia específicamente tenemos una serie de normas, de normativas a partir del trabajo que hemos realizado en la incidencia política desde las organizaciones de las mujeres. Se ha presionado justamente en el trabajo, en el diálogo político interinstitucional, creando puentes justamente entre actores, ¿no? El trabajo repito, de la incidencia política, la coordinación entre actores públicos y privados, el liderazgo político también basado o promovido desde mujeres con una un sólido carácter, digamos, ¿no? En términos también de profesionalizar, por ejemplo, a las mujeres en la política porque las mujeres, como mencionaba también mi antecesora Mónica, decía, las mujeres tenemos muchísimas limitantes para trabajar en la política. Está el hogar, está la familia y también está el apoyo familiar que deberíamos tener. Sin embargo, esto no existe muchas veces. Sin embargo, estas mujeres con este empuje, con este empuje natural, ¿no es cierto? Con este liderazgo natural que posteriormente han servido justamente para que más mujeres se animen a incursionar en la política. Las mujeres en Bolivia y en otras partes de la región no han sido bienvenidas en los gobiernos municipales, han sufrido acoso y violencia política. Entonces, las organizaciones como las asociaciones de concejalas y de alcaldesas han logrado justamente ser instancias de representación, pero también instancias de apoyo frente a estos hechos que han promovido también la salida de las mujeres de la participación política. Sin embargo, a través de la normativa, a través de la ley contra el acoso y la violencia política, se ha logrado sancionar a través de medidas administrativas, constitucionales y también penales contra estos actos, contra estas manifestaciones misógenas de parte de autoridades políticas y públicas hacia las mujeres. Entonces, uno de los mensajes es no dejarlas solas, porque finalmente toda la normativa que promueva la cuota, que promueva la inserción de las mujeres en los ámbitos políticos, tienen que estar acompañados de organizaciones, de bases de mujeres, para que ellas tengan este respaldo, pues difícilmente lo van a tener a partir del partido político. Otro de los temas también importantes es brindar justamente la asistencia técnica a partir de las organizaciones de mujeres a las instancias municipales, es decir, a los gobiernos locales, a los partidos políticos, incidir en estos mecanismos electorales desde la sociedad civil, inclusive desde las redes de mujeres, ¿no? Que fomente justamente reformas legislativas locales y compromisos de gestión, es decir, que el fortalecimiento no solamente tiene que abordar el tema político y de liderazgo, sino que tiene que ver también con la gestión política y la gestión municipal. Encontramos que muchas mujeres desconocen la norma, desconocen la normativa, pero también los hombres. Entonces, no es que los hombres tienen unas capacidades diferentes o supremas así, en comparación con las mujeres, simplemente que existe un entorno, ¿no es cierto?, una estructura patriarcal, machista, que se tiene que desmontar, que se tiene que trabajar. Entonces, en ese entendido, muchos hombres, inclusive en el proceso largo que se ha tenido desde los años 90 en Bolivia y también en la región, se ha ido ya como naturalizando también la participación de las mujeres en estos ámbitos locales municipales. Por tanto, este tema de la normatividad, de las actitudes inclusive violentas de los hombres hacia las mujeres, se han ido también un poco cambiando. No han desaparecido, pero es necesario trabajar estos estereotipos, trabajar los prejuicios, ¿no? Que se encuentra en este ámbito político. Por tanto, el mensaje es decir no es suficiente las reformas judiciales, las reformas jurídicas, perdón, ¿no? Esto no se traduce automáticamente, ¿no es cierto?, en resultados. Entonces, es necesario trabajar justamente en presupuestos sensibles a género para que esto pueda ser posible. El fin no es la norma, el fin no es la cuota, son simplemente instrumentos que sirven para promover la inserción de las mujeres y posteriormente, obviamente, no pedir, sino esperar resultados que puedan brindarse a partir justamente de esta noción de cambio, ¿no es cierto? Es necesario cambiar nuestras democracias participativas, deliberativas, hacia
Thank you so much,
democracias
Maria.
paritarias. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Maria, for sharing your reflections. A big thank you to all the panelists, Artan, Monica, Gertrude, and Maria, for really bringing more than just fresh insights, but also going a little bit deeper into some of the pertinent issues around promotion of women's empowerment at the local level in the political area. And I think I wouldn't do a good job in trying to summarize in very few minutes. But I think what's really been critical, and also looking into the chat, once again to say thank you for a very live audience in this working group meeting. Some of the comments that are really coming resound to what the panelists have been sharing, nuances around how do we build alliances. Thank you for those comments also just coming in now from Margaret Miner, Essie, who's also pointed out, I think very importantly, in terms of not just looking at technical assistance, but also looking at funding mechanisms and what that looks like. And also a comment that came from Yombo Chisamu, who talks about legal provisions in terms of guiding the percentage of women's participation that should compel political parties to bring women on board. All these really valuable inputs that have been shared on top of many other aspects that have even asked us once again to open up, even looking beyond the English words. It's a conceptualization issue around gender equity and what that means within the cultural nuances before we even apply that concept. We thank you so much for having found the time to join us for this. And just before we close, I will pass over to Jackie to give us some announcements in relation to some upcoming work, but also in relation to the next coming meeting. And links have been shared for those who are not members of the Local Public Sector Alliance, the various working groups that you would find very, very interesting, and welcoming you once again to join us. Over to you, Jackie.
Thank you so much. I think we can give some reactions, some happy reactions in the chat for that wonderful moderation, and also on the Zoom. And a big thank you to our speakers for sharing those insightful experiences and really inspiring. I really found the discussion quite inspiring, quite vibrant. Thank you so much for joining us. Your participation has really made this session quite an enriching experience. So as we conclude, a final call, we we will be preparing a primer based on the 5 topics and based on the discussions we've had today. Remember the 5 topics: women's voice and political empowerment at the local level, women in local administration, gender responsive subnational services and finance, gender in the context of crisis, and effective multi-level governance is an opportunity for women's empowerment. So if you would like to contribute to that primer, or you would like to contribute to the webinars, please reach out to me at women@decentralization.net, decentralization with a Z. The email is in the chat box. Please feel free to reach out to us and engage with us, and we will be happy to collaborate and work with you. I also had, there are questions on what can this alliance do. Please, if you have ideas on how better we can serve you and serve this agenda, please reach out to us. We are a very open alliance. We are a very open network. We like to collaborate and even decentralize ourselves. So please, reach out to us, and we will be happy to engage moving forward. Additionally, please register for our upcoming Gender Equity and Women's Empowerment Working Group meeting, which is going to be on February 26, 2025. And we will be focusing on advancing women's participation in local government administration. So there are quite a number of administrators in the chat box in the meeting. Please reach out to us and make sure that you share with your friends and keep updated with the upcoming activities. Please register as a member to stay up to date to the upcoming activities and events that we will be organizing. And please mark your calendars for February 26th. 2025. We really look forward to continuing to work together to promote gender equity and women's empowerment. Thank you so much for your active participation. Looking forward to seeing you in February. Bye-bye.